I think in Ansel's case, you can't disconnect them. They are linked. The feeling for the land, and therefore environmentalism, is an integral part of the photographs. And he never set out to take a picture for an environmental purpose, but he could go out and take a picture and show you how he felt about this incredible landscape. And then it could be used in many different ways. But he said it had to come from his soul and his heart and his spirit, and it couldn't be imposed from the outside. But I truly believe that he was an environmentalist down to his toenails. Just every little bit of him was all about the beauty of nature and the need to keep it inviolate for generations to come.
If you read Ansel's autobiography, you would think that he never had a dark day in his life. But in fact, I don't think that's true. And I think he had genuinely difficult times in his life when he wasn't sure about the work, he wasn't sure about personal relationships, he wasn't sure about his relationship to the larger artistic community.
Well, Ansel had a sort of manic side where he would just push himself work-wise at 20 hours a day, or even all night for all day, all night for several days to finish an assignment, and in the darkroom and out photographing and back in the darkroom, and he would just go until he was shot, and then he would shut down.
The most turbulent, intense, and harrowing year of Ansel Adams' life began with a stunning triumph. By the third week of January, 1936, he was on his way east again, bound for Washington, where he hoped to convince Congress to have the vast Kings Canyon wilderness, southeast of Yosemite, set aside as a national park. Along the way, he stopped off in New York to show Alfred Stieglitz's latest photographic work. He was stunned when the old man offered him a one-man show at his gallery that fall, the first photographer to be so honored in more than 4 years. It was one of the highest points of his entire career. "Everything seems to come to him who waits," he wrote Virginia.
Here he was in his mid-30s with now 2 children, a developing but hardly flourishing career as a photographer. And along comes an opportunity from Alfred Stieglitz to have a one-man show at An American Place, the ultimate venue for any photographer of the day. And he threw himself into this project.
Back in California, with not 1 but 3 exhibits to prepare for in the fall, he plunged into a maelstrom of work. With the assistance of a dark-haired 22-year-old one-time model named Patsy English, whom he had hired to help out with the avalanche of printing.
The show at the Stieglitz Gallery is in the fall of '36, and all that summer in the High Sierra, he's hiking and taking pictures. And when he got back from the summer, then he started printing in earnest, and I think it was white hot in the darkroom. And his assistant, Patsy English, said she remembers that he would say, "I've got to make this, it's just got to be fantastic because it's going to be at Stieglitz's gallery." And sometimes he'd show her a print in the tray, still wet, and he'd say, "What do you think?" And she'd say, "Oh, I think maybe you need to do a little more. Is there more?" So he'd keep going. And so those prints for that show, it's a body of work that's absolutely incredible.
He wasn't sure how much was Stieglitz inspiring him and how much Patsy was inspiring him, because at the end of the day, he did know, whatever it was, that these were, in his mind, the best prints he'd ever made.
And at the same time, he had the one great love experience of his whole life. He fell deeply in love and had a very intense affair, although I don't think it was sexual, with Patsy English. But it was the absolutely great love of his life.
The prints he made that summer were some of the most inspired and luminous of his career. But week after week, the physical and emotional strain of the work, and of his increasingly conflicted feelings for Patsy and Virginia, began to take a toll, until the stress had become all but unbearable.
So he pushed on through the summer, working frenetically, He got the show ready, brought it to New York, and it was a great success. And in the wake of that success, Ansel fell apart. The fundamental reason was just pure physical exhaustion. He'd been working himself just beyond the breaking point. But there was a psychological component as well. You know, he was just not able to deal anymore with the complexity of his life. And I think that he had this sense of feeling trapped within a whole set of expectations, of responsibilities, of just a set of things that he couldn't deal with, and this was the only way he could escape.
For 18 months, he wrestled with depression and a devastating inner emptiness, struggling to come to terms with what had happened.
And he finally realizes he can't overturn things, even though he'd like to, romantically. And I think it was hard for him, but he could really see that he had made the right decision. And he couldn't make the decision to leave because it wouldn't have been the right thing to do. And so he stayed. And you could argue, what would have happened if he'd left? I can't say. He stayed, and he was proud to have been married for 50 years to Virginia. He was really proud, and that his children and his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, it gave him great happiness.
But his sense of what was important was not the breadlines or the wartime issues. He wanted people to understand the deeper time of creation, the great forces of nature and of creation that go on despite the permutations of today. And he thought that this was the fundamental message that people needed to understand, that the world exists within this larger world.
There is a deeper thing to express. The return of humanity to some sort of balanced awareness of the natural things. Some rocks and sky. We need a little earth to stand on and feel run through our fingers. Perhaps photography can do this. I am going to try anyhow. Ansel Adams.
He struggled to put into words what he had come to understand about the things that mattered most.
Dear Cedric, a strange thing happened to me today. I saw a big thundercloud move down over Half Dome, and it was so big and clear and brilliant that it made me see many things that were drifting around inside of me. Things that relate to those who are loved and those who are real friends. For the first time, I know what love is, what friends are, and what art should be. Love is a seeking for a way of life, the way that cannot be followed alone, the resonance of all spiritual and physical things. Friendship is another form of love, more passive perhaps, but full of the transmitting and acceptances of things, like thunderclouds and grass and the clean granite of reality. Art is both love and friendship and understanding, the desire to give. It is not charity, which is the giving of things. It is more than kindness, which is the giving of self. It is both the taking and giving of beauty, the turning out to the light of the inner folds of the awareness of the spirit. It is a recreation on another plane of the realities of the world, the tragic and wonderful realities of earth and men, and of all the interrelations of these. Ansel.